Welcome to Stories from the Subverse. I'm your host, Susan Matthews. In this spin-off of our podcast series, The Subverse, we continue to explore the themes we've touched on there on topics like nature, science, culture, and social justice, but through a more personal storytelling lens. In this series, we aim to create a more immersive audio experience that moves away from the interview format and allows for different and diverse narratives. In our first story from the Subverse, here are a few questions to ask yourself. Did you enjoy your school education as a child? Do you believe that education needs more heart? What are things that can transform our schools or pedagogy? We'll try to answer these and other questions as we head on a show walk with Yuvan Aves. So grab your sun hat, wriggle into your flip-flops, and let's head to the South Indian city of Chennai on the east coast of India. Yuvan is a nature educator, activist, and writer. He's passionate about contextualizing education through one's natural surroundings. You'll hear more from him as we head out on this walk, citing crabs, clams, and snails. It's fine if you don't know much. Yuvan's here to guide you. So from me, Susan, it's now over to Yuvan. It's a sweltering morning in Chennai's Elliott Beach, so dress light and don't forget your hat.
She just questions us on it and we don't know any of those. So it's new for us as well.
Okay.
Yeah, there's so many animals we didn't know about.
So that's all it's a game based on
That's what I keep telling her. I said next time we go to the beach, let's try to spot it.
Hello everybody, my name is Yuvan Aves. I am an educator, naturalist, writer and activist based in the coastal city of Chennai. Okay, hello, good morning everybody. So, quick sense of location on this side. So, the artisanal fisherfolk of this place came here far before the city. Nature and education, it's an uncomfortable phrase increasingly for me. What is nature and what is education? Two variables in the same equation. But, I've been able to loosely define it in my head as to encircle the work I want to do. So today is going to be hot. Let me warn you. So let's start walking. Yeah. And we'll stop somewhere in the middle and then later in the dockyard. Yeah. And we'll do some stuff there. I have beach bingos. Yes. Yes. Okay. So learning should be emplaced in real world engagement. With the environment, with the local community, neighborhood, and the politics and beauty and squalor of where one lives. That is real world engagement. Here, so this side there is Vadakuppam, and on this side, just south of the Adyar estuary, there is Urur Kuppam and Arcot Kuppam. Our work so of course like anybody, I've been coming here for since a long time, but we've been working for the past 5 years, and Nikita is with me, she's also a naturalist, on documenting species here, working with fisherfolk and other kinds of coastal issues. And then learning core value, education's core value, especially at this time and age, needs to be ecological and human values. And not economic values, not political, religious values, but human and ecological values at the center. And my work kind of rotates around this. Everybody has a coastal field guide?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody has? Okay, very good. Now we'll be using that. And that is one of our proud creations because it has 160 species. Sometimes I take people on shore walk from Bessenak and they're like, do I have to walk into the ocean to see these? No, don't do that. You see it on the shore. So as a child, I went through a decade of a traumatic phase with a unstable home and also an abusive stepdad. And I've written about this. And what that, as a young teenager, when I actually left this space, it had imprinted a lot of trauma and fear and anger and sadness inside, which made me quite stormy. And nature, in ways I can explain and simply cannot explain, engagement with it was a healing force. One example would be is seeking metaphoric meaning in the living world as to what do you do with all these strong emotions and fears you have. And for example, detritivores were a strong kind of wisdom givers to me. The lugworms, earthworms, pill beetles. What they did was they took the shit of life and they turned it into something like fertile soil for them to feed off, as well as feeding other life. They are cycle completers. So early I saw myself drawing meaning from that. That's one example I'm giving. As I looked at other examples of people who had been through a lot of hardship and they were able to turn it around. Carlos Castaneda, somewhere he says, you can either be great or miserable. The cause is the same. There was a lot of both subliminal and direct wisdom I got from the lives and roles of other beings, which let me kind of compost trauma into something which drives my work till date. What is this? You got to look at the guide and tell me. You can take guesses, no problem. What is this?
I think I know it's a little mountain.
Yes, it looks like a little mountain. Yeah, it looks like a volcano, in fact.
Yeah, it is a volcano, underwater volcano.
Yeah, it could be. I can put some lava in it.
What?
A boy called Prithvesh Kumar, who's a child from Urur Kuppam, who's a fisher community. And we started doing an apprenticeship program for those children based on their home beach. Our proposal was, if you have a beach and ocean, it can offer you much more than a traditional classroom and its textbooks. When we said that, we were kind of shooting it in the air, but later on we figured out that it was so. Yeah. And this boy, his intrinsic drive to learn language, because it was a portal into his home beach, his whole ancestry was emplaced there. He started writing not just Tamil but English very well, which is something children of that socioeconomic class struggle with. And the teachers came back and said, "What did you do with this guy? Why is he?" And it was not a method or a technique which we introduced. It was based on our values of what learning could be or should be rooted in. Yes, that is it. Titan Acorn Barnacle. Okay. One more. Let's do this. Okay, there's a little clue on the book is that you look on the top corner. Very interesting. So here it's the crab. What is the shell? So the hermit crab, what it does is... So nature and equal spaces. So equality again has many dimensions to it. When we look at a school, there is socioeconomic inequalities. There are cognitive inequalities, ability, and so on. And interestingly, in other countries, there's a lot of literature on how access to nature seems to bridge these and smoothen out these inequalities. And that is something I'm actively exploring. I'll give an example from the very beginning when I started doing this. There are facilities which are available to certain schools which are not to other children. Now, nature allows from a very academic perspective, if one were to see it, lets the child see such things in work, whether it be photosynthesis or the microbial world and other kinds of processes through a keen observation and lived experience through many lenses in their natural landscape, a far better understanding than isolated experimentation. That could be one. The other could be one challenge we all face as teachers, perhaps as students as well, is that we have multiple ways of learning based on what our realities are and who we are, basically. I can think of a good young friend, Mithul. He's my mom's friend's son. He's a highly kinesthetic person. So if he grows something in his garden, it grows very well and much better than what I would do with all my knowledge of what the soil should be and everything. Interestingly, he is struggling in a set static space of a classroom. What it is able to do for him, for instance, if I were to design something around Vedandangal Lake for him, or other local areas, Koturpuram Urban Forest in Chennai, is that it is able to create valuable learnings for oneself, academic and otherwise, by being open to multiple ways of learning. Howard Gardner spoke about now 9 different kinds of intelligences, not as kind of discrete intelligences, but ways of looking at the child, saying different human beings are different. And within the mainstream classroom, there's a lack of celebration of difference. In fact, difference is a big challenge. This perfect whole, how did it come about? So, if you look at olive sea snail, moon snail, these snails here, they are predaceous. So they have a little tentacle which can put hydrochloric acid.
Okay.
They will eat bivalves. So what they'll do is they'll latch here, drill a hole only on the umbo. Anywhere else there's not much flesh. They'll drill a hole here, go inside, first dilute everything, the body parts, and then suck it out. So this is a snail-eaten bivalve. If I may add one more example, from a very physiological point of view, our bodies are wildernesses, Deep time, cellular and microbial life decided they're going to cooperate to create organisms. We need to see our bodies as communities of life. And so the connection with nature, starting from the simple example of vision, and a neuroscientist called Andrew Huberman speaks about this. When you look out into expanses, sky, ocean, grassland, there's something called panoramic vision which takes place, which means your vision is not focused on a single point, but equally distributed. When that happens, your parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. Basically, it's a relaxant. And if the child is indoors, there is perpetually only convergent vision happening, which means within closed spaces, the eye is focused. And when that happens over a period of time, the body is chronically stressed. You can have all the privileges in the world and facilities. If you are sitting indoors, there is a big disadvantage to the child's well-being. Very last, I shall trouble you with. Yes. That's good. Which muscle?
Not the peacock.
Peacock muscle. Yeah?
Muscle.
What does peacock muscle mean?
Did you find it? So look at the colors on it. It looks like, to the person who named it, colors of a peacock. Maybe not. I've been a nature educator for a decade now, and if you were to ask me, tell me one thing which immersion in the real world, the natural world, I'm using that interchangeably, one thing which is the most profound necessity for the young, growing, forming human being, it's that it lets the human being's selfhood expand, one's identity expand to encompass other beings, other landscapes. And one of the things, and I think this is echoed in various Eastern and Western philosophies, a vast selfhood is a compassionate selfhood, and it's able to help other things. It feels hate-less, and a shrunk selfhood based on how the self is formed over the critical developmental periods of the child suffers more. So that would be one very theoretical example, but for me a very key one. to things like there are findings where when you are in touch with the care and observation of other beings, the child is exposed to differences, different worldviews, perceptual fields, which allows empathy. So the needs of a bird is distinctly different from mine. But those fields of interaction are also leaky. We have some commonalities, and there's a lot of otherness as well. The needs of a snake, the needs of a wetland, if one were to see it as a living entity. A lot of indigenous communities look at landscapes as living beings. To care leading to oxytocin circuits in our brain developing earlier. Oxytocin is the circuit for love and compassion and being able to see oneself in the other, as it were. Challenge here is 10 species. 10 different species you got to find within the dockyard. So dockyard is from this boat to the last boat. And you got to draw any 4 of them you find. Yeah, behind the paper. Yeah, draw any 4 of them, find at least 10. So make sure you're not in the way if some boat is going in, coming in. They're very friendly. If you want to buy fish, you can do that if somebody has. Yeah. For 2 million years, if you look at our nervous system and our physiology, for 2 million years we've been hunter-gatherers, and we sometimes associate certain images with that, but it means that we were constantly searching and finding. We chose a life of discovery and constant movement. And for very short time in history, we sit for most of the day. Yeah. So the first thing I see for children, especially when those instincts are strong, before they are beaten into submission of what the larger systemic spaces need out of them, and some of course escape, is this thing of letting all these the deep animal, and I use the word animal in a very positive way, in this living thing, be able to express itself in all its wholeness. That would be the first thing. Now, to go beyond that, let me share a story, veering away a little bit. There was a tree growing in a campus I was teaching in, and it was an Indian beech tree, and it was going to be cut off because a cement seating area was going to be built there. Now, a few other children and one more teacher said, no, we sit under it, we keep our shoes under it, don't do anything to it, everything. So what they did was they left space for it and built the seating area around it. About 6 months later, what happened? This tree did something else. But in that intervening time, I brought children of 3-4 different classes to do ecology lessons around it. The life cycle of a death head moth, the sunbeam butterflies laying eggs on it, paper wasp building its nest there. It's the pollinators which come to it when it flowers in summer, and so on. So it became a sort of a teacher in that space, and children would look at different things on it while going back and forth from the dining hall. 6 months later, the tree broke a huge slab of the cement and chucked it on the floor because its girth was growing. And then the headmaster called me and said, administration is angry, they're going to cut it down and they're making noise. I said, oh my God, they're going to cut it. By the time I went there were 30 children standing there saying, no, sorry, you're not cutting it. You build the seating area differently. Now, that is something beyond safety and concentration. It's about identity and connection and standing up for something. Being a change maker rather than just some obedient entity. I think the scope for that nature allows tremendously, because what happens is you form these neurons of connections with other beings and landscapes, which then tug at you in various ways, and life becomes richer.
I found these and all. What is?
These are in plenty.
Yeah.
See this one?
Daddy, this one I found now only.
beautiful. That is exactly that. Okay.
I'm gonna keep all this. Did it fall?
No. Can I put it in your bag?
Last year we started Palluir Trust for Nature Education and Research. Yeah, Palluir means biodiversity. It's a 2,500-year-old word. And Thiruvalluvar said it first. So he said, Pagutundu Palluir Ombudal, Nulor Togutavatril Yellam Thalai, which means to share, coexist and protect biodiversity is the essence of all our hoarded wisdom. So, the word was taken from there. Palluir could mean all of life, could also mean biodiversity. Not us disincluded. We're also life and very much animal. And through that, we are doing a bunch of things. One is kind of kickstarting in small ways an ecocentric culture, which has deep connections with land and place. And more deeply, looking at the power of nature as an equalizing force. So, our work with fisherfolk or domestic labor communities, Irula, children from there, what nature is able to offer them to be able to face and engage the challenges which is more than normal for them. For youth, we are starting an internship which kind of trains them into change makers and social ecological justice facilitators. It's a kind of a 10-month internship with 10 field trips, interest-based assignments, where they'll be learning laws and RTI, administrative structures, how systems work in governance and so on, and how to engage with it real time. That is something we are working on. Okay, somebody asked me about what that clam does. So all these veg clams, anybody found any veg clams? All veg clams. Okay, yeah. So these clams, when they are alive, they look like this. Okay. So, okay, I'll hold it like this so you don't see the sun. Yeah. This is its foot. With its foot, it will quickly dig inside. Yeah. And this is its mouth. Any idea how it uses its mouth?
To eat food.
Yeah, I know. How? Like it can't num chew and eat.
It swallows.
Huh?
It's
Swallow. Huh? I'm writing a book. It's called Intertidal. Out next year sometime. And it's about coastal ecologies, especially in Chennai. And intertidal spaces, junctions between land and sea. Coastal wetlands, salt marshes, lagoons, inland marshes, and so on. And my experience of traversing these spaces and also fighting for them and interactions with people living here. One of the things you find is that binaries work. There's some good science which tells that this conscious mind of ours can only see in binaries. It can see in male and female, or nature and culture, ecological and social, and so on. Is full of binaries because that's the way it functions. It's a kind of a limited speck of our consciousness, our wakeful experience of things. So one of the things I'm exploring through this book, as well as changing my perception of place, is that lot of land, especially in Chennai, is non-binary. They are queer ecologies, if one were to call it that, which means it's not entirely water, it's not entirely land. Anything which is under tidal influence is something in between the vast continuum of land and water. But because of their classification as either water or land, there are political ramifications. There are violences wrought upon them because you could classify something as the other and treat it differently. For instance, a megaport coming up in north of Chennai. It has shown coastal wetlands as river instead of water as land. But to kind of complicate that binary would make their job far more difficult. Especially a lived experience of these places. If you speak to fisherfolk, there are no binary words. So if you look at words for coastal wetland, the words used are sere Uttukal Porambokku, Uppangali, Kaliveli, Uppalam. All these words are neither land nor water. And one it simply reaches into your brain and rips apart existing lenses and vividifies one's walking in this space. So yeah, that's something I am exploring in my writing as well as messaging in our public work. Spider crab. So usually spider crab on its subtitle spider crab. So it'll have hairs. On these hairs, actually this black place, there was actually an anemone here. So it'll have one anemone on its head. There'll be a little bit of soft coral growing behind. So it'll be like one whole habitat, on top of it. And they live subtitle means just beneath where the waves are crashing, where the waves start. One of the things we've been seeing is how public engagement can shape culture. And one pertinent portal of that is citizen science. It involves, for instance, I did a project with a bunch of class 7 children last year, where they had to create a science project, but then take data from people and then in some way look at it and give it back.
This one. This one. I found one. This one.
This is Murex.
And this one. Sunset. We'll only play with this, okay?
Now, this is a small example of citizen science. So, one group said, what? I am interested in mongooses. I used to see this a lot, but now they've vanished. Another group said, this is a bunch of girls, class 7 girls. They said, I am interested in the perceptions of women during the lockdown. Are their experiences the same as men? And they actually asked 50 men and 50 women and came up with things which press even didn't cover. And so on, a bunch of other projects. And the mongoose group, they did a little Google form, asked people to put down their, where they cited it, if they had pictures, how often they see it, a bunch of details. And then they took it and mapped it. And all the mongoose sightings were clusters around wetlands. Now, that is something I did not know about the creature at all. They live at the junction of land and water, for some reason. When Vedandangal bird sanctuary was being threatened by a pharmaceutical company's expansion, their environmental impact assessment said there are only about 25 species of birds there, not much. It's a world famous lake. We could take data from eBird contributed by anybody who goes there, from 4-year-olds to 99, all walks of life, who had made lists, submitted it on these portals, and we could use that verified and to be used as data to fight conservation battles. Now, this is just a spectrum of incidents showing and changing the practice of learning and education, meaning real-world engagement. Which is to say that young people can directly engage fruitfully for themselves as well as society with the socio-political, ecological landscape around them.
Thank you to Yuvan for sharing with so much heart his ideas on education. We hope listening to this episode pushes you to think of education differently and perhaps find solutions for our children stuck in a sterile, unrelatable education system. Stories from the Suburbs is the podcast of Dark and Light, a digital space that chronicles the times we live in and reimagines futures with a focus on science, nature, social justice, and culture. You can follow us on Instagram at Dark and Light Zine. This podcast has been recorded and produced for us by Anupama Chandrasekharan, and we are very thankful to her. So long, and thanks for listening.
Yes. Anything unusual you found?
This.
What's this? Oh, this looks like a baby version of one of these.